Hi, welcome to the National Queen's Choice Online News, and today's special guest is Pete Price from the UK.
You've just taken my breath away, young man, with me getting an award. I was absolutely over the moon with this. I cannot believe that I have been given this. 40 years ago, I won Compere of the Year in England, and now I've come all the way to Singapore, and I've now got 24 awards, and I really will treasure this. I've just got to get it home without breaking it. So I'm thrilled to bits,
Now, Mr. Pete Price, many of my viewers would like to know what's the secret of your success of being a great compere. What does it take to be a great compere?
I think you need life experience for a start. I think you need to be in the industry for a long time. I've been a comic for 50 years and a broadcaster for 35 years. And I think you've got to know, people think to compare a show is easy. It isn't. You've got to take an audience up and bring them down. You've got to take them on a level. You've got to take them on a journey. And if the evening goes well, then I've done my job properly. But people don't realise you've done the job. And you also set it for the stars. So if you're working with big names, and I've worked with some of the biggest names in the world, and they will say to me afterwards, thank you, you've done your job properly. So it's important that.
Now, Pete, could you tell us how did you land yourself in a job as a compere or master of ceremony? Why?
I was a DJ many years ago, and there was a beautiful club in Liverpool. I was working in a place called the Cabin Club, which was a great little place. It wasn't the Cavern was the famous one. The Cabin was a little place, but I was the DJ stroke chef, so I was a chef. I was cooking in 3 restaurants, that was my trade. And the jazz trio that were playing was sort of very nice and very good, but they had an interval and it was quite boring. People were getting sort of, so I said, why don't we play records? And discotheques didn't exist. This is 1,000 years ago. None of you watching this were born. You weren't alive. And I said, well, let me play the records. And I had 1 turntable and 10 records. I'll never forget it. I was in a chef's outfit and I got them dancing and it was crazy. And I was screaming and shouting and yelling, not knowing what I was doing. A couple of years later, it was building and they said, why don't you give up being a chef and become a disc jockey? And they told me how much money I was earning, and I was quite surprised. I thought, you can't earn that for playing records. Not after cooking for 16 hours a day, that was ridiculous. And my mother got really upset. She went, oh son, all those years learning to be a chef, and how what are you doing? Putting records on. Oh mother, sorry. And that's how it started. And then this fabulous club called the Shakespeare, which was built in 1880, it was a theatre, sadly burnt down now, asked me to go as the compere, and I went over and was the DJ, the host, and the compere on the shows, and I used to tell a couple of gags and sing a couple of songs because I've got a couple of albums out, and I started working with some of the biggest names in show business like Tony Bennett and Shirley Bassey and Dionne Warwick, and I learned my trade working with these stars.
So, what was your biggest failure that you have faced as a compere or master of ceremony? Have you failed before?
For 12 years at the Shakespeare. That was the pinnacle of my job as a compere, because I then went on to top the bill in the clubs. So I then moved on to become the star. And I say that in all modesty, because I'm a very big name where I live. It's just you've never heard of me. So, really. So it was fabulous. I mean, some of the names I worked with, a lot of British names that you won't know, but some of the names, Matt Monro, who was a legend, sadly gone. There was a guy called Tommy Cooper, one of the world's fabulous comedians. Bob Monkhouse, who was like a father to me. These were all big stars in England, and I sort of worked with them, and it was great. And in those days, I was very outrageous. I wore the most outrageous clothes. When I think about it now, I cringe at the way I used to dress, because I'd wear hot pants, leather knickerbockers, and I looked a prat.
What's the biggest challenge of being a master of ceremony?
Biggest challenge is getting an audience to enjoy it, getting an audience to stay with you, getting an audience to enjoy what you're doing without taking from the star. There's certain compares over the years who, if there's a singer on, they'll sing before them. That's wrong. If there's a comic on, they'll do gags before them. That's wrong. You are there to create an atmosphere, to make people feel welcome. I did one thing wrong years ago. The Shakespeare held about 1,500 people, and I used to go around the tables and say, "Good evening, I'm Peter, I'm the host. If there's anything I can do." So, and I thought that was quite clever in a big room. But when I started to get to know them, they kept insisting on me having a drink. I didn't pass 12 tables. I didn't even do my job most nights. I was tiddly. Because I don't want to drink. Cheers, I'm Peter the Combat. I just, it was terrible. So I stopped doing that. I didn't go around the tables.
What will be your biggest influence of your life that has actually enhanced your career as a master of ceremony? Are there any heroes that you look up to?
One man in particular, a man called Bob Monkhouse. He was sadly passed away. He was one of our biggest comedians ever in England. He was on television for 30 years. He is and was the governor of comedy, and if you speak to any comic around the world, they will know Bob Monkhouse. He wrote scripts for Bob Hope for many years, but in his own right was a big star and had Celebrity Squares, and he did so much on television, and he became like a dad to me, him and his wife, who sadly had passed away. And there's a lovely story that I tell. He had a home in Barbados, and one day he asked me to stay, and I never took for granted that I was in the company of one of the greatest stars in England, and I was always pinching myself going, I'm sitting with Bob Monkhouse. When I got to Barbados, they said, you do know you've got to pay for your accommodation. So I said, right. They said, we've sorted out how you can pay for your accommodation. Right. So imagine this beautiful house on the beach in Sandy Lane, Barbados, magnificent place. And twice a day, I had to put a big straw hat on and a pair of dark glasses and go to the top of the balcony. He's playing Scrabble downstairs with his wife. And I then wave, and there's the tourist ship. And there's Bob, wave back to Bob. There's Bob. Look at Bob waving to us. Isn't he a lovely man? And that's what I had to do twice a day. So I pretended to be Bob Monkhouse and waved to the tourists who pestered him. So that's how I paid for my accommodation. I thought that was wonderful. That. So if anybody out there wants me to come and wave and I'll get free accommodation anytime.
Now, how did you develop your creative acts? Is there a secret to it?
There's not a secret. I think you've got to be naturally funny. I believe hairdressers naturally have to have a passion for hairdressing. I believe chefs have to have a passion. You can be taught, but you need to have that knowing how much salt to put in, not measuring it, knowing. You just know that feeling. And I got that when I was in the catering business. I've naturally been funny, don't get me wrong, I've had some bad nights, oh my word. I've walked off to my own footsteps, I've been booed off stage, but they make you who you are, because all that makes you who you are. Those lessons are the greatest lessons in the world. So I think I've got a natural talent as a comic. Maybe some of your listeners watching now have seen me and wouldn't agree with that. Sorry.
Now, when you were booed off the stage
Yep.
in the past, when you begin your career as
In the beginning, yeah.
as a compere, how do you overcome discouragement? I mean, for those who are
It's
watching.
difficult. It is difficult. Especially if you're on tour and you have a couple of bad nights. There's certain pockets in England. There's a place in England called the North East, which in the club days had so many clubs. They'd seen every act. So you could be the greatest comic in the world, which we'd put the shows together. And they wouldn't laugh because they've seen every gag and every act. So they were hard, but you learn from them. You take from those. You know, you'll say, if you don't laugh at me, I'll stay on longer, just to annoy you. So you learn lovely lines like that, which nobody can teach you.
Amazing. Now, you said you used to be a chef.
I used to be a chef, went to catering college, did it properly.
Now, have you ever regretted that you have left your profession and become a master of ceremony?
And I'll tell you why. I don't smell the chips anymore, so I think it's great.
Amazing. What would be the 3 key advice for young aspiring comedians around the world, including Singapore? We have the comedian club in Singapore as well, who are trying to be funny. What would be the 3 key advice you got to give to them?
I'll tell you exactly. You've got to believe in yourself. Don't let anybody knock you down. If you believe in if you believe in yourself and you believe in what you're doing, you stick at it. And if there's a glimmer of funniness, then keep at it. Think about what you're doing. And then when you're older, like I am, you'll have all those pockets to pull from. But never, ever give up. People laughed at me when I said I was going to be a comic. Laughed at me. I've made a very nice living. I'm in Singapore. Wow. I would never have been here without the knowledge of comedy. So, to any budding comics out there, just stick at it, and don't ever falter. Do what you feel is right.
What's next for you, Pete?
Hopefully, they're going to sign a contract for me on radio. My boss is wonderful because I'm now 68. He says if I give you 2 years, you might die on air, which is great publicity. So I think I'll probably die either at the microphone or on stage. I died a few times when I was younger, walking off to my own. By the way, dying on stage means you're having a bad time. So a lot of people don't know that expression. It's a great expression.
Yeah. Now, being 68, one of our reviewers would like to know your secret of your health. How do you manage to stay so healthy?
I honestly believe it's work. I work 7 days and 7 nights. I love work. At Christmas time I do pantomime in England. It's amazing. It's like Cinderella, Aladdin. In fact, I'm in Aladdin this year. I'm playing the Emperor. I'm third on the bill, so I'm one of the stars. And it's a tradition in England which is amazing. I will do 2 shows a day and a 4-hour phone-in for 6 weeks. And I'll live on 3 to 4 hours sleep. But I do believe, and I swim a lot, and I believe you've got to have a young attitude. I think my phone-in, which by the way you can hear anywhere in the world, it's Radio City Liverpool, so have a look for it, you ring in by all means, because if you ring us, we'll ring you back, so we'll pay for the call and we can talk. They are 5 nights a week. There's an invitation.
So how can our viewers get to know you more? Do you have a website or a Facebook?
I have a Twitter, which is Pete City Price. But if you go to radiocity.co.uk, you'll see many, many photographs. You'll see a lot about me, and you'll learn all about the radio show, and you'll see the pantomime, etc., etc. So I'm out there. I also write for the Liverpool Echo, which I love. So I do everything just to get the money in. I want to die very wealthy.
Oh, one last question. What is good comedy?
Good comedy is when you walk out and you feel elated and you've forgotten all your problems and you've had a good laugh and you think, that was the best tonic I've had for years. That's good comedy.
Well, Mr. Pete Price, thank you for joining us here at the National Critics' Choice.
And can I say to you, once again, I am absolutely delighted at getting this award. I cannot thank you enough. I am so, so thrilled. I haven't a clue where I'm going to put it. There's so many awards in my house. That was a joke. Anytime you want to give me an award, give me an award.
Thank you.